There's a lot to cover in a very short space of time, and I also want to acknowledge the connections with previous speakers. The first is I'm not a city mayor, but I am from London, the most congested city in Europe probably, although car ownership in Slovakia and Slovenia are higher per capita, so that's interesting. And we're also the only city in the world to have 3 times hosted the Summer Games in the Olympics. And we've just had that, and that was an interesting experience being in London, to see how a city copes under the stressful situations, but it was widely acknowledged that was good. So that's my credentials. I'm British, I live out of London, and I'm going to talk to you about cities. The moderator mentioned over 50% of the population already is in urban areas. 2050, it'll be 75% around the globe. It's already more concentrated in Europe, and that's presenting tremendous strains on meeting the objectives that most cities have got in social development, in competitiveness and economic growth, and of course, as we've been hearing a lot about already, environmental sustainability. So cities need to grow their economy, they need to invest in their environment and making it an attractive place to live. But with that population is coming these increased service demands, and particularly with cities as large as London, but others as well, actually diseconomies of scale that come with size. And competition with other cities. My colleague Jan Murfeldt this morning talked about tolerance, technology and talent being the 3 keys to making your city region attractive. And it is fair to say, as another commentator mentioned earlier, cities have been at the hub of economic value creation even before nations came into existence, and they will continue, as all indices point to be the place in which GDP, most GDP in the world, is generated. So, how do we help leaders make a real impact? Well, I'm from a technology company, but it isn't just about technology, it's about the application of technology. And these are just some examples of the many functions that cities have to perform in order to help their citizens, their businesses and their other stakeholders go about their lives, go about their business. And while each is unique and serve many different functions, they have tended to grow up in that way. And so what we've found as we've automated through technology over many decades is that we've created more silos. More and more silos, which means that there's lack of interoperability, lack of exchange, lack of economy across all of these services. But if you look at what some of the core business processes are, they're actually very similar. Decision making, about having productive public sector workers, civil servants, about engaging with the citizen more effectively and being more responsive. And so the opportunity really is to think about the core parts of those business processes and how they can be re-engineered to underpin all of the lines of service or lines of business that cities have to deliver. Now, you can talk a little bit, I think, about how simple automation is also operating. And we just announced, if anyone was watching the news in this space just about 10 days ago, with Mayor Bloomberg of New York City, a joint collaboration to invest in Public Safety Initiative, which is a co-development with the City of New York, which we will then have a co-remarketing agreement around the world. This is a significant change in the nature of partnering with cities for Microsoft, and indeed we think is leading in the field of applied technology. You can read more about that online. I don't have time to go into the details, but I think it's an interesting milestone for thinking about that. Now, why is that also important in this context of the era, as Mr. Glenn said earlier, about us all becoming cyborgs and self-generating our own electricity for all of our devices? I probably won't be around when that happens, but my kids and my grandchildren possibly will be. Sensors and transistors are everywhere, so self-management, self-diagnosis, self-healing are all part of that in energy, in lighting, in transit, and it can be delivered in multiple ways, and there are some underpinning things we have to do to make that work. So one of the key things is the solutions that we build. Microsoft is a platform technology company that partners extensively with many providers who specialize in the areas that are of interest, if you like, to these lines of business. Some of those folk are here today, out in the exhibition area, and many others are not. And I don't plan to go through this in a lot of detail. And these are just some of the companies Microsoft works with in the space, serving cities and making the application of technology effective and efficient. But that's not all. It's also about the programs that we do and the initiatives and investments that we make to support that, for job creation, for skills, investment in youth. There's a major announcement coming later today from corporate that I'm not allowed to talk about until after 4 p.m, which is actually when they will announce it in the US. So watch this space. We're very committed to the programs of investments, and with that, the programs of partnerships that we have with organizations around the world. And this is not an exhaustive list, but an indication of some of the global ones, and some of those folk that spoke this morning, including the European Investment Bank, are part of that network of conversations and partnerships. Again, I don't have time to talk about how technology helps cities in real detail, but we've probably got an example in almost any sphere that you could think of, from smart grids with our work in Issy near Paris, which is where our French headquarters are, which is a smart grid energy optimization, or driving down CO2 emissions, as the previous speaker was talking about, and figuring out how to transfer consumption to new forms of energy in order to improve costs and improve the environment. In Barcelona, actually, one of the interesting things we've done there is hot desking for civil servants and folk. You know, if you go in an internet cafe like a Starbucks, you can connect to the web and work there. Most of the people that are in there are budding authors, I think, not doing serious work. But the government has lots of real estate, and they have lots of people moving around the city. Why have to go back to your office to connect to file your report after you've maybe done a child welfare visit? Why not find the nearest available space that you can go to that's owned, managed and secured by the government, and use that? Also in Madrid, if you're into your trees and your tree hugging, they're doing environmental work. 245,000 urban city trees have sensors attached to them to monitor their health. City of Cape Town, actually, smart procurement. This is quite an interesting example, and I know we have some colleagues from Africa here who have been participating. Smart procurement is, and how you do tendering across city departments. We've helped put a system in Cape Town and many other cities that do that. Transport for London, another example. So there's lots going on, and of course, just last Tuesday, the EU Parliament adopted the Directive on Energy Efficiency. So that target of 50 billion euro saving a year for the 450 million people in the EU needs the proper ICT and the proper programs and the infrastructure, obviously, to support that. Okay, moving very rapidly through. I would say, though, our focus is on the people. The city is made up of people. Okay, you want to attract people, you want to retain people. It's a war for talent that we've talked about. It's a war for creating an environment that's attractive, has good social environment, culture, green space, as we've heard, education opportunities, and of course, job opportunities. It's about connecting the citizen, it's about connecting the worker, and it's also, of course, about connecting the leader, many of whom were speaking on the panel just before. So very quickly, I'm going to talk a bit about big data and open data, not in any detail. It's quite hot right now. There's some conferences happening this week in this space. Really, if you just imagine going back to what I said before about the business functions, transit, infrastructure, education, and so on, they're all producing lots of data. The challenge really is to synthesize that into what we would call, and others call, a data mart. So the idea is that you expose that in a controlled way into a catalogue which allows external parties, they can be citizens, they can be government, other government institutions or agencies, academia, or indeed commercial organizations with the appropriate controls to have access to that data to add value. And one of the things that I'm going to just finish with, and it's a shame that most of the mayors went to lunch and didn't come back. I think they're doing the tour that they were promised of the #1 city that is Ljubljana. I'm going to talk a bit about the mayor's dashboard. I've got a couple of screenshots just to illustrate what I mean. You can call this the city leader's dashboard or the chief exec's dashboard. But the idea basically is to use KPIs, key performance indicators, to drive performance management for executives in real time. And the key is in real time. So I've actually got the slate here on I don't have time and it won't plug in to show you, but just to prove it's live. If the demo gods are smiling, which is always a risk. This is a Samsung tablet. This is running Windows 8, which actually releases to general availability next Friday, plug, plug. But, so this is the new interface that people, you know, the tile interface. And I'm just very going to quickly open up. This is the app live. This is connected to the internet in this room, and it's taking live feeds right now. This is my favorites. And it looks just like you're seeing up on the large screen right here. But I can open up, you know, any of the indices. Where's the camera? Which one's got the camera? Is it you down there? And you can drill into these. So the next slide that I'm just going to very quickly show will give you an example of that. So here we've picked I deliberately picked this one. This is the percentage of jobs working in the green technology sector. So if you set yourself a target as a city leadership to create green jobs or jobs in the green technology sector, then you can measure your performance, you know, in real time. You can, another commentator, I think it was the mayor of Baku, was talking about women in jobs and women working in the public services. You can have an indice on that if you want. So the important thing here really is just about, and I'll have this around if people want to have a look, is about the application of technology that is meaningful and is accessible and helps drive insight and clear decision making. So I just want to finish with a couple of remarks which actually aren't mine, but I want to pull out a few key words from this. This is actually from a Gartner report last year, in July last year. We know the city is a living place, a living organism. It's both its physical environment, but it's also broader than that. And there are demands that citizens and businesses and other stakeholders play on that. And I would make the case that the smart city, if you want to use the term smart city, or the way to build a better city, is the integration of those functions that I described earlier, that cross all those boundaries, those traditional areas of responsibility, to drive those efficiencies, to create the new opportunities, to do that in real time. And of course, I would say that requires technology. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Burrows.